Ladies and gentlemen, squaddies, welcome back once again to Dauntless and the Fearless Slayers Guide series. Now today I am going to be hunting the Quillshot, but before that I wanted to talk about some stuff, because there's been quite a number of changes to the game, to Dauntless, since the last video. The patch was pretty big, but you'll notice that I'm actually wearing a full set of armor for once. Well, mostly you can't see the helmet, but they've changed up a lot of stuff. First thing I want to talk about is the potions on your loadout. So your hotbar. That's what I actually look at with the helmet on. First off, your health potion, your number one. You now always have 5 of them. You don't have to make any more of them, ever. The other thing is your self-revive stim goes on the same slot. When you go down, it becomes a single self-revive stim that takes up the number 1 slot. You don't have to make them. They're free. So that leaves 2, 3, and 4. These are now free to mix and match. So, for example, I've got a stamina potion, a blitz tonic, which is just attack speed, and a frenzy tonic, which is attack damage. You're free to mix and match that as you go. The other big thing that's changed, I'll go to the map and I'll show you, is I used to go by tiers on where a beast was. There's still kind of some of that. We have the sheltered frontier, which I can't even go to anymore. You have the monstrous verge, the underkeys, and the uncharted reaches. Same areas, but now there's not really a clear tiers. Because, for example, if I go to the uncharted reaches, where I've got my current quest, I have a quest to slay a Hellion and a Stormclaw. Those are actually the same tier, but at the same time, let's look at the monstrous verge. Excuse me. You have these 4 beasts. Again, some of that is from the old game, is from the old system, with the Gnasher, the Scrave, the Quillshot, and the Skarn. But now, let's take a look at this. Pursuit. Here, you still have the or not the Scrave, that's a Shrike, sorry. Shrike, Quillshot, Skarn, the Charog, Drask, Embermane, and Scrave. Now, the Embermane did not used to be on the Yonder Keys. It used to be in the Uncharted Reaches. And it's upgraded to the point that basically in the Yonder Keys now, the Embermane is effectively what it was at Tier 3 in the old game, in the old patch. But we're going to head to the Monstrous Verge because, like I said, we're going to be hunting a Quillshot today. You'll see a lot of changes, and I'm not going to take the time to explain all of them right now. Just because I need to actually get this, we actually need to get this going. Also, you'll notice the private hunt. Also, the map screen, yeah, much different, but... Alright, I'll see you guys in just a second once we're in to the hunt. Alright, folks, we are in. Now, hunting the Quillshot, before we get started on that, I'm also going to say there are a couple of changes I will talk about when we get back to Ramsgate. This has also changed. The names and needs of various crafting things have changed.
Can provide a boost of energy.
That happens once a login, so. But yeah. Collecting resources is still important, but like Aether Wisps, all they do now is give you the speed boost. They don't give you do not collect them anymore. But anyway, as to the Quillshot actually has about 8 attacks, but it's a very tricky beast. It's a neutral monster, so it doesn't have any elemental effects. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, because the Quillshot is very, very intelligent about the way it uses its attacks. When I get frustrated with it, because I'll admit I do, I tend to refer to it as like a third-rate Ganon knockoff. You'll see what I mean. But all of its attacks are really based around its name. It's kind of a giant warthog porcupine beastie. And a lot of its attacks are based around the spikes on its body. Now you might be thinking, why are you doing this at what it basically amounts to tier 1? It's because they made it so that tier 1 beasts have access to basically everything, if not all of the attacks they do at higher levels. The main difference is that they just don't hit quite as hard. There. It's over there. Yeah, there's a launcher. In fact, you can kind of see the Quillshot in the distance. It's right there. And it spotted us. It doesn't look like much now, but watch. The spikes on its back, and its head, and its arms. Alright, that right there. Where it kind of raises its shoulders and head. That's the spike ring. You'll notice that what it does is it does that motion and then snaps the center of its spine back up. The spikes only don't go very far away from the Quillshot. And in fact, it's just a defensive attack. There are some gaps in the spikes, but I do recommend just rolling away from it because it's hard to predict where exactly those gaps are going to be. This right here, though, the spike mortar. That's probably its most common attack and one of the more dangerous ones you'll see. Not because how much damage it does, but because of the fact that... Actually, I'm sorry, I think it also has 9 attacks, but... The spike mortar, individually, they don't do a lot of damage. But it will usually exclusively target one person outside of Enrage. The trick here is, if one of you is attacking and is actually up by the Quillshot's head, the Quillshot might start tracking you. Like, its head might start following you. That is a trick, because where the Quillshot is looking is not necessarily where it's going to fire. So you have to watch the spikes. I don't have to worry about that right now because I'm solo, so I don't have to worry about it trying to trick me. Now, the tell here is it'll kind of hunch up a little and its back will start kind of pulsing a little. That's how you know it's going to be firing. That's also part of the trick to avoiding, or one of the big tricks to this thing, because if I can do this right... Because if you can break the spikes, it means it can fire less of them. See, I broke the spikes on its head, I've broken the spikes on its tail. If you can break the Quillshot's spikes, you're in a good position. Now that right there, where it flops over on its side and waits for a second, that's what I like to call shotgun spikes. That's a weird attack because it's hard to avoid, because the exact angle they come off at is a little bit random. But like I said, it flops over, holds on for a second, its whole body kind of shakes, and then it fires off spikes from everywhere, all the points on its back that still have them. But you see how I've now broken that part of its spikes? That means that when it goes to launch spikes from that area, it will not launch quite as many. But yeah, you see how it's kind of puffing out air. That right there, kind of what I like to call it's just a shoulder charge. Ow. It kind of leans away and then charges forward on its front, really on its front legs. I messed that up myself. But yeah, the shoulder charge, like I said, leans away. It charges a good distance with it. The flop over, which we saw... Oh, actually, I'll talk about that right there. That's just the belly slam. it just raises itself up, turns towards the target, and then just tries to land on them. Another shotgun spikes. That tail swipe, you can kind of see it by how it rears its arm, or it rears its back end away, then spins on the spot. Look at that. That was bad luck. No shotgun spikes for you. Alright, now that I've destroyed all the spikes, a lot of its attacks are not going to work. Except it's usually going to do something very specific in this situation. Namely, this is usually about when it starts trying to enrage. That right there is just a shoulder charge. You can kind of see it coming by looking for where it leans back. You know what? Actually, I'm just not doing well with it. I'm not doing well explaining the attacks. Well, a couple of its other attacks we can still talk. We can. Once again, you saw the lead up there to the tail swipe. There you saw just a simple claw swipe. Oh, there's the enrage. One thing you'll notice about the enrage is that its spikes come back. Most of them. This is the spike mortar that you see in is actually very dangerous here. Because when it's enraged, it will actually rapid fire that and do multiple targets at once if there's more than one Slayer out here. I'm lucky because I seem to have permanently damaged the left front shoulder. That right there, is kind of a mix of what I like to call the crawling claws. There's variants of it. That one is not the main one. The main one is it will kind of flop on its belly and pull itself forward with its front legs. This actually goes quite a ways, and the claws and the head are the main hitbox, but I mean it's the entire body at the end of the day. Let's see, what have I missed? Oh, the claw swipe. Basically, it'll draw back one front leg. We saw it already. But it'll draw back one front leg and then swipe. It can do this either forward or backward. And it has a longer... The lunge on it actually has a decent range, so you gotta be careful with that. Going... I'd say going to the side is probably your better bet than just trying to do this straight away from it, because, like I said, very long range. But yeah, aside from regrowing its spikes and making them a bit tougher to destroy while it's enraged, the only difference in enrage is the spike mortar. Also, this might be where you see something about the Quillshot, namely if it notices... Oh, actually, its left front shoulder is actually fine. Great. Worth it. Okay, that right there. That is one of the big problems I have with this new patch. I'm going to talk a little bit about that real quick. Is that they seem to have really increased the time it takes for your Slayer to get back on his feet. Or his or her feet. The recovery times in general just seem to have been upped. So you see the mortar spikes, there's the enrage. I will freely admit the Quillshot is not my best hunt. Yeah, you see just how dangerous this spike mortar can be when the thing's enraged. But yeah, aside from the spike mortar change, the enrage has the standard speed and damage buff. One thing I might recommend, if you're hunting this thing when it enrages, put your weapon away. Put your weapon away and start running. Because that'll actually mean you don't run out of stamina. And you might be able to avoid it, the spike mortars. Okay, I was right at the end of my roll. That was legitimate stupidity on my part. Oh, come on. Yeah, that's the thing. The Quillshot, see... that's actually not just the Quillshot. They seem to up damage across the board with this patch, as well as some of the hitboxes you'll see. So you gotta be a little bit more careful with dodges. I say that just as I roll under the Quillshot. Now you might notice I'm putting a lot of emphasis on destroying this thing's tail. It's because there's a lot of... there's quite a number of spikes on the tail you can get rid of. Yeah, see? I'm putting away my spear. And then I'm sprinting away. I am not gonna try and fight right now. I'm just gonna follow my own advice and try and avoid this thing until it finishes enraging. Now this is also a good tip, is watch when it starts doing the spike mortar, watch the skies, although you gotta be careful about when you bring your camera back down so you can actually see what else it's gonna do. There's the forward claw swipe I mentioned. There's the backhand one we've seen before. There's actually one attack it hasn't done, but that's because I haven't spent as much time behind this thing. That's what I like to call the burial claw. It's very quick and has very little tell. Basically what it is, it's, if you've ever seen a dog or a cat use its back feet to try and bury something, that's how it looks. It does one with the leg nearest the target, then it does one with the other leg. It usually ends up flopping on its stomach when it does this. Actually, hold on. Let's go ahead and charge my last shot there. Like I was saying, it usually ends up flopping on its stomach, and it'll often also do a third with the starting leg. Okay, I'm actually not doing too bad. Quillshots are a tough fight, especially when they're not your main source of enemy. Like I said, I'm not terribly great against a Quillshot. Ah, good. I was right. I should not have tried that one. Okay, I tried to roll there. Yeah, I wouldn't have done that considering I had no stamina. Let's use my stamina potion real quick. Oh, come on. There we go. Not my best hunt, but like I said, the Quillshot is not one of the enemies I like to go up against. Alright, we'll do the quick roundup when we get back to town. The ones I have to remember are the belly flop, and there's something else, because it turns out I missed a couple of attacks, as you probably know, because I said 8 originally. Alright, sorry about the weird cut there, ladies and gentlemen, but trying to load back into Ramsgate, the game actually crashed. It happens sometimes. Alright, I'm going to do my quick rundown of the attacks, and then we'll go and talk about a couple of the changes. Actually, we're going to talk about the biggest change, probably. Alright, first off, the Spike Mortar. Probably the most common attack you'll see. The Quillshot pauses for a bit, hunches its entire spine up a little bit. or it basically kind of rolls its shoulders out. And if you're near the, if you see somebody near the front, the head will kind of start tracking them. Remember, that is a trick, because after tracking for a moment, its stomach will kind of start rapidly pulsing, and it fires out groups of spikes at a target. Now, they do have a seriously long range, and there is a they scatter a little bit, so that dodging and rolling is not 100% guaranteed, so be careful with that. But remember that the head tracking somebody is a trick, because the one it's tracking is not always the one it shoots at. So watch the skies for the falling spikes. Next up, the spike ring. Pulls its front legs back slightly, hunches itself into an arch, with its stomach going low and its shoulders going high. After that, it will basically thrust its stomach up, and spikes will launch into the air. Usually they land in a rough ring shape around the Quillshot. Not always, sometimes they'll be grouped in one area. The best idea there is just get away from the Quillshot, because that's that is its defensive attack. Next, what I like to call a flop over. This is kind of similar to the shoulder charge. In fact, I think if I had to say, they're probably variations of each other. It leans away from a direction and throws itself the direction it's leaning away from. It slides a good distance and then takes a few seconds to stand back up. Now it can do the same. It does kind of the same thing when it does the shoulder charge version, but instead of flopping over, it kind of pulls itself along, or instead of just throwing itself, it kind of pulls itself along. Alright, next up, the shotgun spikes. It just kind of raises up and then slams itself sideways onto its side. Like I was saying, it slams itself onto its side. That does a little bit of damage and knockback, but mostly the danger here is because after a second on its side, its whole body quivers, and then it fires out a plane of spikes, basically a line. Those spikes will deal a lot of damage, and they go very far. There are gaps in between them, but you can roll under them, but still, you don't want to get hit by them. Especially because once you get into the higher level stuff, if they still have it, it might cause wounding. Right, the claw swipe. This has two different variations. It'll draw back a leg if it's going to do the forward version. It'll draw that same leg off to its opposite side if it's going to do the backhand version. The forward version actually has a lunge to it, which has a decent range, so roll to the side to avoid that. The backhand version, it stays pretty much where it is, and it just, but that one I think has a wider hit arc. Next up, the crawling claws. Usually the Quillshot seems to roar before it does this. Then it flops on its stomach and pulls itself forward with its claws. This is it's got a very quick pace for how fast it moves and a pretty wide hitbox, so just don't get anywhere near the Quillshot when it's doing this. It's also got a tail swipe where it kind of leans its front end stays basically exactly where it started. Its tail moves very far away, and then it swipes the whole tail. This goes in I want to say about a 200-degree arc, but you can roll through the tail, so it's not that bad of a deal. Excuse me. The belly flop, where it raises its upper body, or the front part of its body up into the air, turns towards its target and lands on them. This has a very quick tell, so be on the lookout. The last couple of attacks, the barrel claw. This is only used on targets behind it, and it's very hard to predict because of how quickly this comes out. It does seem to lean forward just a little bit, and then swipes with one foot. Usually this is the foot closest to the Slayer that it's targeting with this attack. So, and then it goes for the other foot. Usually it'll flop forward onto its stomach for a second, and then it'll swipe a third time with the starting foot most often. And then we have the Enrage. You've seen it hunches its shoulders, and then that aura that you see, the pulsing aura that behemoths give off when they enrage, that is That does actually have some physical force to it. It does very little, if any, damage, but it's basically just an area clear. And it will knock you down, so be careful. That is on all behemoths now. Now, just like other behemoths, it becomes much faster and much more dangerous to attack while it's attacking during this. But the big change is to the mortar spikes, or the spike mortar, because it can actually multi-target. So, like, if there's 4 of you, it'll rotate at semi-randomly which of you it's going to shoot with that. You have to be on the move. I recommend putting away your weapon and just running around. Alright folks, that is the basic rundown of the Quillshot. Now I've got a couple of things I want to talk about with some changes. First off, let's talk about this. The weapons. This will also work for the armor, but let's use the war pike. Now you can make one of the things about the system, actually before I do that, let's go to the journal. These are my quests, and then you have what's down here, reputation. Reputation is a new thing for this game. It's an old thing for a lot of games. But basically, you have 3 different people that have reputation. You have Slayer, which is the lady at the very start that gives you she gives you your basic quests. The Weapon Master is the guy I was just talking to, makes your weapons. The Alchemist, you might not recognize the name, is this guy over here, not Emperor Bacon, the guy behind him. This guy. Arkin Drew, the guy that makes your lanterns. Now, or actually, no, I'm sorry, that's not true. The guy that makes your lanterns is not the Alchemist. The Alchemist used to be called the Quartermaster. It's down here. This guy's the Alchemist, I'm sorry. Marcus Bohr. But yeah, basically to unlock some things, you have to now get certain reputation. So for example, if you're doing Slayer reputation, all you get is cores, which is a good thing because you can get quite a lot of stuff up to level 20 with these people. The Weapon Master is the one most people are going to want to focus on first because you get some cells. But here's the thing: when you first start, you only have access to 3 weapons. You have access to the swords, the chain blades, and the hammer. To get access to the axe and the war pike, you have to level up your Weapon Master. At level 2, you get access. At level 4, you get war pikes. I'm not a super huge fan of that, but... And then the Alchemist, you start off getting potions. Specifically, you get Stagger, Expose Potion. You also get a Damage Pylon later on. Now, you'll notice that you have 3 different quests here. You have 2 dailies and a weekly. So, for example, to get the dailies for the Alchemist right now, I need to get 10 Phoenix Opal, 10 Heart Lily, and 50 Sky Bloom is my weekly. Typically, it'll focus on what you need to do. It'll focus on what that person does. So, like, for the Weapon Master, it's do things with weapons. Like, right now I've got to hunt behemoths with axes. Whereas for the Slayer, it's patrols and specific hunts is all that is. Now, that also leads into what I was talking about with the weapons and armor earlier. Because it used to be that when you went to the Yonder Keys, you would get Yonder Keys Arcanite, same with the Monstrous Verge, and the Uncharted Reaches. And talk to you. Now instead, you just have Arcanite for armor and weapons. You don't have to worry about, oh, I don't have the tier 3 Arcanite to make this, or I don't have what I need for this. Or you never have to worry about not having the Arcanite, because the Arcanite, you will have it as long as you've earned the Arcanite from something. I forgot I can make Pangar stuff. You still require the behemoth pieces. So, for example, the Drask spear that I'm using, the Drask warpike that I'm using. Mine is maxed out, but it takes certain pieces. So let's look at the Shrike. Like, to make it, I needed Shrike feathers. I've got that, but Pangar, like severed tail plates, Pangar hides. You still need the behemoth pieces, but the Arcanite will always be just weapon or armor Arcanite. That's a really big change. There's a couple other changes, but Fearless Slayers, let's discover those on our own. Mostly it's just like how you unlock new lanterns, which is by questing. I know I said I would let you guys separate that on its own, but You can also unlock different potions, of course, by doing things. Now, one last thing I'll talk about, because if you notice, this is how my guy looks. He used to have a bit of a large blue woad swipe over his right eye. If you want to change how you look, you used to have to buy it. Now you can just come up here, talk to this guy who is sparkly, and you can actually change your ancestors. You can angle that way a little more. Skin, everything, you can change it all.
Looks good. Really?
So the cosmetic changes are now free. Well, squaddies, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm not a big fan of fighting the Quillshot, so I'm glad that's out of the way. But if you did enjoy, please share, like, or favorite the video. You can also leave a comment down below if you have anything you'd like to say. If you want to keep up with me and never miss any of my current series, then consider joining the squadron by subscribing to the channel. It does help me out, and I really do appreciate it. As for that, folks, I have been D. In addition to doing the Fearless Slayers Guide to the Quillshot hunt, we've also talked a little bit about the changes that have been made to Dauntless. Hopefully pretty soon, I'll see a lot more of you here in the Shattered Isles with the open beta, but that'll be coming a little over a week from now. But until then, folks, good night and good gaming.